Two sets of rules. Why millions of Americans have lost trust in the system. Welcome back, everyone, to Common Ground Conversation. I'm your host, Todd. This is a daily podcast and YouTube video, straight talk, right down the middle. I tell you how it is, no in between. I hit both sides of the aisle, just a little conversation. So let's get down to it. By now, most Americans have heard the argument. One side points to the riots that occurred in cities across America during 2020 and asks why those events don't receive the same level of discussion today. And the other side points to January 6, 2021, and argues that it was fundamentally different because it involved the United States Capitol and the certification of presidential election. Years later, the debate continues, and so does frustration. But perhaps the most important question isn't which event was worse. Perhaps the bigger question is this: have Americans lost faith in the same standards that apply today for everyone? A nation divided by perspective. So you've heard that old saying, a house divided cannot stand. Well, we're kind of heading that direction because we have two different sides of the aisle that are really divided. They're so far apart. They're not even touching hands. The aisle is so divided. One of the challenges facing America today is that people often begin with different assumptions about the same event. Some Americans, the unrest during 2020 represent a period where violence, looting, and destruction were minimized or excused because the political causes behind the protest. So, yeah, a lot of politicians seem to encourage this type of behavior. Fact is, they are doing it right now. This divides a country, and when this happens or that happens, we will have a hard time standing. This country needs to come back together and start, and it starts with the people and the media. The media is part of the problem, as we all, as well as the social platforms or media platforms. And I'm talking about X, TikTok, uh, Facebook, all those. They all need to come together and become one and not sit there and point fingers at each other. For others, the focus remains on the millions of people who protested peacefully and sought reform through lawful means. Likewise, opinions about January 6th vary dramatically. Some view it primarily as a riot that spiraled out of control. And this is true. And it very well could be true, depending on how you look at it. The right didn't seem to condemn it either, and the lines were being drawn in the sand. You had the left upset about the right, and the right said what was wrong. Others view it as an attack on the constitutional process and a direct challenge to a peaceful transition or transfer of power. The result is that many Americans are not merely disagreeing about politics, they are disagreeing about reality itself, which is true. The role of the media. This is what kills me here. The media organizations play an enormous role in shaping public perception. It seems no matter what the media has to put, what happens, the media has to put their 2 cents in. Whether it's good or bad, the public seems to follow suit. They're always putting their 2 cents in. And nobody says you can't have your opinion. However, don't push it on everybody. Have your opinion, say this is what I believe, and then report the news. Let's get off your high horse and report the news correctly. Whether people lean to the left or the right, or somewhere in between, many believe the media often applies different levels of scrutiny depending on who is involved or who's saying it. Who, whether it's the left saying it or the right saying it, the media has to get right involved. The media seems to always pick a side. They tend to go to who pays the most. Money drives their train. They're the ones, and it's the loudest one. So whoever's the loudest, that's who's going to get the voice. Conservatives frequently argue that violence associated with the left-leaning causes receive more sympathetic coverage. Liberals frequently argue that right-wing extremists poses unique risks that warrant additional attention. Regardless of which view a person holds, there is growing lack of trust in major institutions. When trust declines, every headline is questioned. So the real question is, do you follow the media or what they say, regardless of who says it, or do you listen to the message? How many of you actually do that? How many of you listen to the message? Probably a good chunk of you don't. To be honest, because I would be willing to bet most of you don't listen to the message. You immediately turn off the person who is delivering that message, depending on who says it, and or follow who you want to, or depending on the news station. You may not like that news station or whatnot. You probably only listen to one news station and don't flip through the channels. You can listen to more than one news station and come up with different messages on the same topic. They're all different, but you need to do your research on a topic and then come up with your own opinion as to what's going on. Every report is viewed through a political lens. Every event becomes another battle in an ongoing cultural war. And isn't that the truth? Do we trust what we are hearing? Most likely, a lot of people out there do. A lot of people that are listening to this or tuning in seem to believe what they hear. And then again, maybe not, because a lot of people don't even have jobs and are going on to protest and getting paid for it, and they don't even know what the heck they're protesting. One of the most troubling trends in modern politics is the tendency to judge actions differently depending on who commits them. Too often, people excuse behavior from their own side that they would immediately condemn if committed by their opinions. Can you believe that? Just because their side's doing it, it's okay to do it. But if the other side does it, we're going to condemn it. And you see that right now. If the left did it, it's okay for the left to do it, says the left. But if the right turns around and does it, then it's bad. It's wrong. And you see that right now. This becomes a nightmare. You have heard the old saying, what is good for the goose is good for the gander. Well, that should be the same for everything, to include the news. Everything should be the same or receive the same amount of coverage. I'm getting tired of all this bickering and everything like that. This applies across the political spectrum. When loyalty is a political team, because when loyalty to a political team becomes more important than consistency, honestly, discussion becomes difficult. Americans began defending individuals instead of defending principles. And isn't that the truth? So you defend the individual and not what is actually being said. If they say something that you disagree with, you will still defend that person even though you disagree what he or she said. That is pretty sad. If you don't like what they say, then say it. You don't like what they say. You disagree with. You like the person, but you disagree what he or she said. Nobody's going to condemn you for that. The shift, it can be dangerous. Healthy society depends on people who are willing to apply the same standards to friends, opponents, and public officials alike. It is okay to disagree. This makes Americans healthy and strong. But when the media steps in, and says, no, this is the way it should be, then then as a public, we start to question what is right and what is wrong. We need to stop that. We need to question the media and say, what are we doing or what are you doing? What most Americans actually want, and this is what we want. Despite the constant fighting online and on television, most Americans likely agree on more than we realize. Most of us believe that violence is wrong, property destruction is wrong, assaulting police officers is wrong, political intimidation is wrong, public officials should be held accountable for their actions. But yet, we argue because we're protesting against it, we protest against those things. We say, oh no, that's right, because we're afraid to stand up for what we believe in. It's time to take the bull by the horn and say enough is enough is enough is enough. The disagreement usually begins when discussing who is responsible, how events should be interpreted, and whether accountability has been applied fairly. But who is pushing us over the edge? I believe the media is. So that's a question I want to ask. Who is actually pushing you over the edge? Is it the media or is it the politicians? It's probably the media in most cases. They're actually pushing you over the edge because they're telling you something you want to hear, or maybe you don't want to hear, but they're saying it the loudest. So you're thinking that they're right. Have you ever thought about that question when it comes to protesting? I mean, seriously, if you talk to most of the protesters, they don't even have a clue what they're protesting or why they're protesting because that's their job. That's their full time job. They're actually getting paid by a company to protest. It was put out in the news this morning that companies are paying people to protest, even though they don't know why they're being protest. That's what their job is. That's why none of those people have jobs, normal jobs. They get paid to do that, to protest. They don't even know why they're protesting. Whether discussing, so the question worth asking is whether discussing the unrest of 2020 or January 6th or any future political conflicts, Americans should be asking questions, the hard questions. Were the standards fair? Was the coverage balanced? Were laws enforced consistently? Ask those questions to yourself and then step back and look. Did I protest and then did I get arrested because I threw a rock at a cop and then I got arrested? Was that being fair? Well, yeah, it was. Because I was stupid and I threw a rock at a cop. Did I try and drive over somebody and then I got arrested? Was I being, yeah. Did I get in a fight in a public area and then I got arrested because I started it? Well, yeah. These are legitimate questions in free society, but they should be asked with a commitment to facts rather than assumptions and with a willingness to hear perspectives that differ from our own. So here's a final thought. America has always experienced political disagreement, and that is nothing new. And everybody should always have political disagreement, and that's cool. All right. What really started happening was back in the early 2020s, back in about 2025, 2000, probably five or so, somewhere around there. You started seeing the shift where the Democrats and the Republicans both sat on two different sides of the aisle. And that's where the big shift started shifting. What is new is the growing belief among many citizens that institutions, media, organizations, and political leaders are operating under different sets of rules. And that's the problem. We have too many different rules that people are operating under, and they don't care. They think nobody's governing them. It's time for us to stand up and say enough is enough. Whether that belief is fully justified or not, perception itself matters. Trust is difficult to build, is easy and easy to lose. And if Americans lose faith in justice, accountability, and truth applied equally to everyone, the division we see today may only deepen. So the challenge before us is simply deciding which side is right. And is there a right and a wrong way? So right now you have the left and the right. Is there a right and a wrong on those two? Probably not. They need to come to the table and start communicating because they have not. They haven't been to the table in over 2 decades, 3 decades. They have not communicated and have not talked to each other in over 3 decades since the early 2000s. They have not gone to the table and actually held a conversation and talked to each other. The challenge is rebuilding confidence that the same principles apply to all Americans, regardless of politics. And again, thank you for tuning in. I hope you like what you are hearing. If so, then share with friends and family. Subscribe below. Hit like as well. Again, thank you. And I hope you all have an outstanding day. Look forward to hearing from you and see you on the next podcast.